Thank you, Terry, and thank you, Bayless. It's quite an interesting story when you think about it and what we've gone through in the last 3.5 months, that things have turned out fairly strong for us, given all the challenge that we've been facing and that all of you have been facing. So I want to give you, if I could, a chance to go all the way back to a year ago. Many of you were with us at the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C. We were finishing our centennial celebration, but talking about the second century of NCARB. We were talking about what should we do with this blank canvas to make sure that we're stepping out smartly, that we've learned lessons from our past, but we're still open to innovation, that we're open to evolving as an organization. So we made a series of commitments a year ago that we were going to focus on getting back to basics, to really revisiting the 3 E's of education, experience, and examination, the basic services that we provide. A lot of new member board members have come on in the last several years. There's been a significant turnover in member board executives, and the world is changing, even more so than we thought at the time. We also talked about the fact that you as member boards continue to need more service as your budgets are cut, as your regulatory framework is challenged, and as your value needs to be marketed. We want to provide more services for you. And also, what is NCARB's role in this evolving world in terms of assessing competency, delivering tools to our member boards, being in the conversation nationally about the value of regulation, sharing our data, being thought leaders? And what about diversity, equity, and inclusion? Everyone is talking about the fact that the architecture profession itself still has a long way to go. We as an organization are largely dependent on who governors appoint to our member boards for our pool, and not everyone outside NCARB understands that. Our presidents-elect for the past several years have worked mightily to diversify our volunteer pool, and they're doing a great job. And our own staff, while already diverse, is working on raising awareness, starting new conversations with each other. And there's advocacy. There are the regulatory challenges that we have been receiving in a variety of fronts, through executive orders, through bills, last-minute legislation, some of it well-intentioned in the context of the pandemic. But how do we make sure that we continue to protect the basic regulatory framework? All of this, from back to basics to advocacy, actually fits together. So today, what is our focus on back to basics? One of the challenges is the remote issue, remote education, remote work to earn experience credit, and getting up with a remote proctoring option for the exam. Member support, helping you audit compliance with CE, giving you a tool. We have several boards now that are experimenting with a new CE auditing tool. Transmittals, especially for initial licensure, need to come out the door more quickly. So an expedited protocol is being designed and piloted. Transparency back to you on the quality of our customer service staff work and outputs. Our MBE committee is continuing to tweak that quality assurance audit every year. Templates for you to help you with doing annual reports, sunset reviews, reports back to your legislative committees or to your governor's office. We've worked with several of you on that. And hosting open forums, whether it's via social media or other platforms, to talk about the why behind the NCARB toolkit. And we're reassessing our role. We have a much stronger partnership today with other like organizations, CLARB, the landscape architects, NCES, the engineers, CIDQ, the interior designers. We share boards with many of these other groups. We are meeting with them much more regularly and looking for opportunities to do things together, to be more efficient with our time and to have a better understanding of the context in which you operate. We are wrapping up phase 1 of our multi-year analysis of practice. This analysis of practice is going to be an amazing data survey exercise that's going to have an impact for years to come on how our different programs evolve. And we're pursuing research. We're joining with the American Institute of Architects on a new study to succeed the Boyer report issued in the 1990s that through a grant took a look at the dynamic between academia and practice in the architecture community. It's been a long time since that report came out. It spotted a lot of issues. It's time to revisit those issues and see what else we can learn and how else we can grow and evolve from new research. And we are doing business planning and visioning session activity with our vice presidents and meeting with our board of directors for the first time in a joint session to talk about goals and aspirations for the coming 3 to 5 years. And we do have a continued focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. These aren't just words. We have real commitments. Let me start by sharing with you our new partnership with the National Organization of Minority Architects, how it is evolving, and some of the early outputs from that partnership. We went into the field with NOMA earlier this year to do a first ever attrition assessment, trying to understand the impediments on the path to licensure that are causing people from underrepresented groups to drop out of the path at a higher rate than white males. We also were given a consultant by NOMA to advise us on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. He's had one meeting with our diversity collaborative, and our intention was, if we were meeting together, to have him run a workshop for us at the annual meeting, and we're going to repurpose that arrangement to some other engagements with you in the coming months and throughout the year. We're also looking at unconscious bias as it relates to the ARE and the AXP. What is in our content, what is in our messaging, what is in our delivery that might unintentionally create impediments for people from underrepresented groups? So it's in a sense an audit of both of these programs. And we have new initiatives inside our own staff community. We have a staff-led Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Agility group. The acronym is IDEA. And that group has been raising consciousness and is planning curricula and training to make sure that all of us are in the conversation, and in the conversation in a way that is respected, that is truly inclusive. So today, I'd like to go a little deeper on this issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion as it relates to NCARB by the Numbers, our annual data publication. So this year's NCARB by the Numbers is available digitally on the NCARB website. We've also provided links on the members only site and under the resources lab here on the ABM site. So for several years, we've been providing demographic data regarding the path to licensure. We've also been assessing attrition along the path, where and why people stop pursuing licensure. And this year's publication has gone further to shed more light on the challenges our candidates are facing. So building this understanding enables us to identify any bottlenecks or hurdles that are disproportionately affecting certain groups. So our NCARB by the Numbers insights are telling us several things. We're seeing a gradual improvement in many areas, but there's still more work to do, particularly regarding reducing attrition for minority groups. Now I'd like to share some of the data with you. Gender equity improved or held steady at most career stages in 2019. Slight decreases were seen in the proportion of women starting at the experience and examination programs. The largest increase was seen in the proportion of women who completed the AXP in 2019, which increased 2 percentage points. These gradual year-by-year gains have led to a steady improvement in gender equity at all stages on the path to licensure, with women now accounting for 40% of active candidates and close to that number for completing candidates. This is contributing to a steady increase in the proportion of women certificate holders, which has risen by 4 percentage points in the last 5 years. When we look at attrition in the Navigating the Path section of the publication, we can see that since 2012, women have had equal or less attrition than their male peers. In fact, the average female candidate who started an NCARB record in the past decade is 4% more likely to stay on the path than the average male candidate. When we look at race and ethnicity, we are also seeing some positives. In 2019, diversity increased at nearly every career stage, with the biggest gains in proportion of people of color who completed the experience program and began the examination. This chart shows the change in demographics over time at the point of experience completion. Since we started tracking this data in 2010, we are pleased to see steady improvement in recent years, with a 4 percentage point gain in 2019. Some groups, such as Black and African American, remain underrepresented when we consider US Census data. However, when we look at the same year-on-year comparison for exam completion, we are yet to see the same improvements in diversity, with only marginal change over the decade. Non-white candidates accounted for 21% of candidates completing the exam, 0 change from 2018, and only 3% point improvement occurred over the decade. So why might this be happening? A look at attrition in the Navigating the Path section reveals that we are losing minority candidates at a greater rate than their white peers. The average candidate of color is 31% more likely to stop pursuing licensure than the average white candidate. And this trend appears largely unchanged compared to previous years. So clearly we have more work to do to address these discrepancies. This, in part, is why our partnership and ongoing work with our colleagues at NOMA is so important. In early 2020, we partnered with NOMA to release a joint survey regarding impediments on the path to licensure, so that we can better understand other factors influencing the licensure pathway. Over 5,000 candidates, recently licensed architects, and individuals who've fallen off the path participated. A teaser report previewing some initial findings is included in the NCARB by the Numbers report. Here are some headlines for you. Black and Latino candidates are slightly less likely to receive firm and supervisor support toward completing the AXP. Age is a major factor in candidates' ability to complete the experience program. Black and Latino candidates have more difficulty affording the ARE and receive less firm support toward the cost of the exam. Black professionals are less likely to see themselves reflected in firm leadership. And people of color are more likely than white candidates to stop pursuing licensure after working in a firm. Over the coming months, we will be working with NOMA to release the full report, taking a detailed look at factors that are influencing experience, examination, education, firm culture, and career progression. We will be identifying potential next steps and further study as needed. We are excited to have this partnership and to be doing our part to address equity in the profession. So today, we also have achievements in the area of advocacy. Just in the past few months, we've had some victories in Arizona and South Dakota regarding legislation and executive orders to make sure that they aren't too broadly written and negatively impact the work of our member boards. We have a stronger focus on polling and research through our association with the ARPL organization, the Alliance for Responsible Professional Licensure. In January 2019, NCARB partnered with the Benenson Strategy Group to better understand the public's perception of licensure and regulation, revealing that most voters feel that professional licensure for architects is an important factor in protecting the public health, safety, and welfare. Building on this initial study, the Alliance for Responsible Professional Licensing, ARPL, and Benenson Strategy Group conducted a follow-up survey in the fall of 2019 to get a better understanding of the public's position on current licensing standards and requirements. The survey received nearly 1,000 responses from registered voters, representing a diverse mix of genders, ages, races, and political ideologies. The study indicates that while voters are open to changes in the regulatory system, most voters believe minimum competency requirements are important by 75%. And they do support the current regulatory model used by architecture and other professions by 67%. In addition, most respondents would prefer to require licensure as the default system by 71%, and they value the current role of regulatory boards by 90%. We also have a path forward that is resilient, and it is particularly resilient in the era of our finances. You heard Bayless's report that we finished the year with a lower accrual deficit than what we forecast a year ago, that our revenues have been sustainable to continue to support essential services and selected initiatives. I'd like to give you a preview now of the FY21 budget. Our fiscal year starts on July 1st. Earlier this year, before the COVID crisis hit, we wrote a first draft budget that anticipated a lot of new initiatives and some growth for the council. Once the COVID crisis hit and we went back to reviewing that draft, we decided to scale back our original projections for both revenue and expense. So our new draft budget proposes or projects 18% less revenue than originally projected and a corresponding reduction in spending by 18%. How are we going to reduce the spending? Well, for starters, we see next to no travel or face-to-face meetings for the first half of the fiscal year. We're reducing our expenses for consultants. And at the staff level, we are eliminating, freezing, or deferring most employee benefits, including professional development, tuition reimbursement, raises, bonuses, promotions, and we're also freezing hiring. We are also delaying or phasing in some of the new initiatives that we had originally projected. However, with all of these budget cuts, we are going to project a positive cash balance this time next year. Between the balance on hand that we will start the year with on July 1st and the net income for the coming 12 months, we expect to end next fiscal year with roughly $1.5 million to the positive in cash. At the same time, when we layer in our capital and strategic expenditures, we will end the year with an accrual deficit of the same number, 1.5 million. Our interpretation of revenue is based on a conservative projection. While we have some strong trends that seem to be holding steady over the last several months, we want to make sure that if things worsen over the summer and into the fall, that we can weather the storm. So we're going to take it a little more conservative to make sure that we make it through with the basics intact. We are reviewing on a weekly basis all of our trends compared to previous year trends because things do operate in cycles, and also looking at cash flow and economic data regarding the building professions generally. We're also going to convert our budget discussion with the board of directors into a rolling budget discussion rather than a one-time-a-year vote. So we'll be coming back to the board at every quarter and meeting with our treasurer very frequently just to see, are we on track with our projected revenues? Have we cut spending far enough? And if it looks like our revenues are stronger, we have some things in the on-deck circle that we would like the board to consider moving back into the budget. So we have challenges ahead in addition to watching the economy and watching the budget. We are actively working on designing a new remote proctor version of the ARE. For some of you, this is a familiar term. For a lot of you, not so much. So in the coming months, we're going to be socializing the concept to you. We're going to be reaching out to you to explain the science, the rigor, the technology, the security, so that we can all get comfortable with this as an option, not the only option, for taking the exam. We also are going to continue to need to be vigilant regarding regulatory attacks. As states struggle to get back on their feet, there will be some in the political spectrum, especially during this election season, who are going to argue that less regulation is better to help the economy come back. And those regulatory changes could wash ashore to our member boards. We want to make sure that that doesn't happen. We also monitor the impacts of the pandemic on a regular basis. How is that going to impact the economy of the architecture profession and of the idea of pursuing a license in architecture? And how will that impact the NCARB culture? Ongoing remote work at the staff level and ongoing remote engagement with all of you as volunteers. We need to make sure that we have new ways to make sure we're being efficient, make sure we preserve the sense of working together and coming together, even if it is remotely, so we can get the important work done in the coming 12 months. But it's a time for us to experiment, to discover some new approaches that maybe will last after we get through this crisis. And we also want to acknowledge during this time of new and richer and tougher conversation around race and diversity and equity and inclusion, that we are acting in a manner that is accessible and respectful and absolutely inclusive. We all need to be in conversation. We all need to be listening to each other and all looking for ways to improve, not to alienate. And so we're hoping in the coming months that we can be part of those conversations with you and to demonstrate leadership in this area. So I want to assure you, from the staff perspective, we are prepared and we are committed. We have an outstanding staff team, and many of you have had a chance to meet them and work with them over the years. All of them are tuning in today to this annual business meeting. Normally, if we were together, I would be calling out my senior staff and thanking them personally. And last year at the Mayflower, we had all of our staff walk over and join you. So today, I'm simply going to say it's an honor to work with all of them. And I want to take a moment and pause while we scroll the names of our vice presidents, our assistant vice presidents, and all the staff that report to them in each of their departments. I do especially want to thank my Chief Operating Officer, Mary D'Souza, who's also the overall coordinator of this annual business meeting, our Chief Innovation and Information Officer, Guillermo Ortiz de Zarate. The three of us together have been on the phone constantly, several times a day, it seems, throughout the pandemic crisis, and we've grown quite close. And I also want to thank the folks behind the scenes that worked on putting this virtual annual meeting together, our audiovisual contractors, as well as our staff team, Andy McIntyre and the marketing communications team, Josh Badkin, Maurice Brown, and the credentials committee, and everyone else who's worked so hard to pull this off. Thank you all very much. Some of you who are watching are from other organizations, and I want to brag a little bit that I think our alliances are stronger than ever with all of you. And hopefully you feel the same way, you at the member board level, that our alliances with you are stronger than ever. So let me close by taking us again back to a year ago when we unveiled our refreshed strategic plan. You all helped us with this refreshing of the plan by your workshops, your written feedback, conversations with you as I visited your boards and at our board of directors table. We went back and we tweaked the mission statement to make sure that we inserted the words that we were coordinating and working through our member boards to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. We revised our 3 goals. We kept facilitate licensure. We broadened foster collaboration to apply to internal collaboration inside NCARB as well as external. And we had a new 3rd goal, maximize value. And certainly in this past year, that 3rd goal has been tested. As we work remotely to deliver services to you, as we address the regulatory challenges, as we go through the gyrations of opening test centers and getting people back on the path to licensure. It hasn't been easy. We've hit some bumps along the way, but at the end, I think we're all working toward the same goal, which is to have this big conversation about why what we do really matters, why where we're going has meaning, and why if we do it together, we truly can go further. Thank you very much.